Welcome to the 22nd episode of the GameFor Podcast. In this episode, set in a strange new world, we will talk about how to play tabletop games remotely. I'm Adam.
I'm Matt.
And we're part of Milkcan. We're the company that makes GameFor. GameFor is the app for connecting tabletop gamers. Right now, you should probably be staying home. But we're working on some things going forward, and part of it is this podcast. This podcast is very helpful, I think, for folks who want to take their minds off of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we're just going to kind of keep moving forward as we can. Obviously, we're not able to do it in the offices. We're both at our separate homes, as you should be if you can. And we are recording remotely, and we're going to keep going forward with the podcast as normal, and maybe even expand a couple of things. But we'll talk a little bit more about that between the two of us, and then hopefully let you guys know as soon as we can. So, well, what have we been doing? Well, one thing, just to mention, is that we were both at the Gamma Trade Show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The Gamma Trade Show is
just pre-outbreak in the U.S.
Yes. The Gamma Trade Show. Gamma is the Game Manufacturers Association. It takes place in Reno, Nevada the last several years, and it is a trade show of game manufacturers and publishers, companies that service the game industry, and then there's lots and lots and lots of retailers who attend and go to seminars and walk around during the trade show time and like look at booths and talk to different people and stuff like that, learn about new games, all kinds of stuff. We had a booth again this year, this third year in a row. We had a booth there at the Gamma Trade Show, and
we did a session as well.
Right, exactly. Yeah, we also had a session. We had like a seminar that we taught.
Oh yeah, seminar. Yes.
Yeah. About they're called sessions, but it's basically a seminar.
Yeah.
And it was about basically like, does your tabletop game need a app? Like a companion app or things like that. Right. We talked about the things to think about and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, dependent apps versus non-dependent, and straight native apps, web apps. Basically, ended up being mostly about how to bring digital into that world.
Yeah. And it was attended pretty well, and that was kind of cool. It was our first time doing it at this particular trade show.
Yeah,
and,
good feedback, and a really cool room we were in too. It was
that's very true.
Near penthouse, and had like the whole spiral staircase up to the room, and
yeah, it was very cool. It's a cool place. The Peppermill Resort and Casino is the building that Gamma's been in. The Gamma Expo has been in for the last couple of years, and it's a cool place. We did that, and we had a booth, like I said, in the trade show. Talked to a lot of different publishers. Talked to a lot of different game store owners and employees. We saw all kinds of new stuff that was kind of coming out.
Less capacity than there normally is, but
right, yeah, people were already starting to limit to some degree, and so far, like, we've been back. It'll be 2 weeks this upcoming Friday.
Yes, just a few more days.
We're both feeling okay. We haven't had any issues, so I think that's going to be good. But we're still, obviously, generally hunkered down at home like everybody else. We live in Wisconsin, and as of this recording, the governor is putting out rules for stay at home, basically about you need to stay at home, all kinds of different stuff. Different states have got different ones going on. Ours is being implemented like tomorrow morning. So it's an odd time. So we've had, a little bit more free time. Like, we're still working, but obviously we're not going out and doing all kinds of things after work gets done.
Right.
You've got kids, Matt, who are in 2,800 different types of activities.
It's been really weird because normally my evenings are booked, and I've had nearly nothing. I mean, there's still some stuff kind of going on, and there's some stuff being done to kind of fill the gap. But really, I mean, like, I have no plans tonight. I don't know the last time I've had no plans on a weekday.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what have you been doing then?
I've got my 3D printer cranking out those buildings I was talking about. I'm almost done with the large 3D building. I've got it paused right now for the recording of the show. So, but I only have 2 roof pieces left. But I mean, it's as it's now like pretty much completely assembled, it's gorgeous. I'm just blown away by it.
At the settings you're setting it in your printer, and you've got a Creality Ender 3 Pro?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long would you guesstimate is like all the parts for this big cool building? Like print time?
When it gets, I think by the time I get the last piece, it'll be about 5 to 7 days of printing.
Wow.
Nonstop. But I'm doing it at a pretty high level. Detail,
which is to say, like really, really tiny detail, and
so
it's putting as many stripes,
right? So it's putting a lot more time on it, but it's also not using any more material that way, and it's looking phenomenal. So it's going to save me time, having to do finishing work, and with the amount of detail that the designer put into this, I really would hate to lose some of that, So this is working out really well.
No, absolutely. That's very cool. And you're doing it all in black filament, and then I'm assuming you'll prime it in some fashion, and then start working on painting. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I'm using PLA Plus, and it seems like the black version of the one I'm using. I forget which brand I'm using right now, but it for whatever reasons just seems to be exactly perfect for my printer. So I'm just going to keep going with what I have that I know works. So. And cool. I think I just got the latest one for $18 a kilogram. So I mean, it's for that quality is great. So
cool. What else you got going on?
My two youngest kids have said that they would like to learn how to paint minis. Nice. So I bought myself some new brushes. Just nothing expensive, just a bigger variety pack, so that I can kind of loan out some of my quote older brushes to them, without having to fear that I'm getting low on brushes.
Sure, yeah.
And we've got their models picked out, two WizKids models, the unicorn and I can see it right now. It's basically the guy riding kind of the like giant wolf dog thing. So yeah, we're nice. Hoping maybe even today we'll get that to painting. So been doing that, and this Sunday, my normal group that comes over, we obviously couldn't come over. In fact, we weren't going to be able to DM the rest of this month because of how busy my schedule was. But now that it's free, we decided to try playing remotely. So that was the first time I've DM'd remotely. So that was quite interesting. Nice. So yeah, I'll get into that more when we get down that later. But yeah,
but that ties into the subject of today's video. So that's very cool that you've been able to get into it for the first time.
Yeah,
and be able to speak about it.
Absolutely, yeah. So how about you? What have you been up to?
Well, I've been working on some miniatures that I've been kind of working on for a little while. Like I've got this kind of independent, kind of indie sort of sci-fi skirmish miniatures war game called Star Breach, which I enjoy. And so it's one of those games that doesn't have an attached miniature line to it, so you use kind of whatever miniatures you like. And one of the big benefits in my mind of doing those types of games is then you can kind of convert and tweak and be very creative with the stuff that you build. So I've done that with a bunch of models. A lot of them are from Games Workshop, from different lines, like some Warhammer 40,000, but also a lot of them from Necromunda. I really love pretty much all the Necromunda models. So I've been modifying those with, swapping heads and putting different heads on that I've bought, online. There are a lot of companies out there that make resin components known as bits that are basically something that you can use when you want to customize your models, that kind of thing. But Games Workshop themselves a lot of times also gives you lots of extra, if you're playing, if you're trying to build like 10 Space Marines that come in a box, 9 times out of 10 they're going to come out with, that box is going to come with at least 15, if not maybe even 20 heads. So you hold on to that stuff that you didn't use in other kits, and then you use it for someplace else.
Yeah,
so
I've got quite a bit collection already started.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the smart thing to do. That's the smart play. Honestly, the smartest play, if you're real super organized, which I'm frequently not, is once you get done with a kit, you go through and then you use your clippers to clip off all the other bits you didn't use and put them into those, those kind of clear plastic, like organizer kind of craft things. Well, no, like more like the you see them for like fishing lures and stuff like that. It's like a clamshell, but it's got lots of different. It's got lots of different little compartments and stuff like that. So that's a good place to put those things too. I've got several of those full of different bits. So all the heads go in this little container, all the arms go in this little container, and stuff.
I was hoping to really get into bits at Adepticon. That was one of my to dos.
Right.
To find some fun little things.
No, because there is a seller that comes to Adepticon all the time called the Bits Guy, and he just brings just like it's 40 feet of bits. So he has all these different bins you go through and all the little Ziploc bags. But I nonetheless
that would probably be ground zero if that had gone forward.
Well, for years. So for those of you who haven't been to Adepticon's it's basically the biggest miniatures convention in America. And it would be going on. We're recording this on Tuesday. It would start tomorrow for us. So it's this, when this comes out for you and you listen to it on audio, maybe Wednesday, and then, when you watch the video on Thursday or whatever, that's when Adepticon would start. So unfortunately, obviously it's not going to happen. But I've always for years thought that basically it's like those clear plastic tubs that you get for storing shoes and stuff like that underneath your bed, those kind of Rubbermaid ones. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
So it's and they're like, I don't know, maybe 18 inches wide, 19 inches wide by maybe 2.5 feet long. Yeah. And each one of them has got a label on the front that says like Space Marines or Orcs or, Eldar or whatever. And then you take the top off, and he's just got these all stacked up in a big line on his racks. And then you take the top off, and there's just these tiny little plastic bags that are filled with like heads and arms and little different bits and all that stuff. And they'll say like $1 on them or $2 or whatever. And it's just written on those. So you just paw through all of those bags, and they're like kind of like right, especially if you're a little bit shorter, or even if you're not, you're kind of just like leaning over these tubs. And sometimes a sneeze sneaks up on you and you're just going to sneeze directly into the tub. And for years, even way before this pandemic, I was always like, that just pawing through that, I really need to wash my hands after I'm done. You know what I mean?
Right.
And in this day and age, I don't even know, now what's going to go on with that stuff. But nonetheless, I have in the past certainly collected and purchased a lot of bits like that at that thing. But nonetheless, in most situations, you end up with a whole bunch of bits that you just save over time from kits that you build. And so I've been building, like I said, some warbands for this game Star Breach, and I've finished painting one warband, and this is the second one. And I primed them all, and I dusted them so I primed them all black, and then I dusted them from above with white. Mm-hmm. And for those of you like not into miniatures and stuff like that, that's called Zenithal Priming. You're basically almost like adding a light source from above, because the sun or whatever star you happen to be standing near is usually above you in some fashion if you're on the surface of a planet. So the light comes down from above, and you kind of have to add in that lighting effect in miniatures to make them look a little bit more three-dimensional. There's something about the physics of light and stuff like that. When something's really tiny, if you just paint your pants blue, they'll just look blue. But if you paint the pants blue, but paint some sort of shadowing underneath, like between the legs and a little bit of highlight on the knee where it's, bent, then it looks more three-dimensional, even though it is a three-dimensional object. There's a long story behind that. That's maybe another episode. Anyway, I've been working on those guys, and once I'm doing a very simple paint job on them, but then I'm going to spray them with an enamel wash, and spray them with my airbrush with an enamel wash, and then you let it sit for about 3 minutes, and then you start to rub it off with like an old piece of t-shirt and maybe some Q-tips and stuff like that, and it just automatically makes them look kind of grungy, which is cool, but it also really just, I don't know, it just really adds something to them and makes them look amazing.
They came out amazing. I remember seeing the pictures when you were first doing it, and I couldn't get over just how well it did. And
it goes really quick too. It's nice. You can't do there's like 8 or 9 guys in the squad. I can't do them all at once, because if I spray them all with the enamel, by the time I get onto the second or third guy, the fourth guy's enamel will probably be dry. You have a little bit of a narrow window there. So I usually do them in pairs. I'll do 2 and then sort of clean up the airbrush just a little bit, wait for about 3-4 minutes as I'm doing it, and then rub off the stuff, and then put in some more. And so I kind of go back and forth that way. So it's a little fiddly, but it's also incredibly speedy once you get the hang of it. So that's kind of a project that I've been doing when I've had the gumption to get going lately on some of that stuff. And then I am also, when I'm not interested in paint mode, although I've been mostly in paint mode lately, I'm also very slowly building the terrain kit that came in the big Warcry original box set. Warcry is a fantasy skirmish game it came out last summer, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, last summer.
So. And that's kind of like the Age of Sigmar Games Workshop.
Yeah, it's Age of Sigmar. The full name is Age of Sigmar Warcry, and it's kind of like Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team. Like Kill Team is the kind of the skirmishy version of Warcry, or sorry, the skirmishy version of 40K, and the Warcry is a skirmishy version sort of Age of Sigmar. Though they are still different from each other. They're not just, it's a cool game though. And the terrain is amazing, and many of the models that they made just for the game are also very cool. So that's where I'm at with that stuff right now.
Very nice. That
and washing my hands and trying to go for walks, but not get close to anybody and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Is there anything else you've got that you've been working on or that you're thinking about?
I think that's it for now, but I'm sure I'm going to get, busier as I try to fill up my time now that we're in this for the long haul. So
yeah, it seems like it for a while. All right. Well, we still have got a question from the audience, so that's cool.
Yeah.
We've got a question from Frankie Lee Bailey, and Frankie Lee Bailey, because we're reading your question on the air, we're going to send you a GameFor, a special limited edition GameFor t-shirt, as long as our t-shirt manufacturer will still be sending. I'm pretty sure they are. I know I got an email from them today, like not an email like hey, we're shutting down. Yeah, it was some sort of an email that we got about them working with small businesses and stuff like that. So I think that they're still planning on it, but we'll see how that works out. So if it doesn't happen, in some point in time, you will definitely get one, Frankie Lee Bailey. So there's that. All right. So Frankie Lee Bailey asks, what do you think of the return of some older games as reboots or as relaunches? We did technically there's more to it. I'm just going to stop here for a second. We did a video or a podcast actually about that, kind of talking about games like Fireball Island and stuff like that. But I think he's going a little bit different angle here. Mm-hmm. Two good examples. Let's hear. BattleTech has come back as numerous video games, but putting that part aside, the tabletop game is also back as WizKids, and some of the original creators will be shipping the BattleTech Kickstarter soon. I think it's WizKids and Catalyst, actually.
Yep.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
Catalyst Game Labs, Catalyst Game Studios, something like that. Mm-hmm. Classic Paranoia has been slightly rewritten as a still classic RPG. Do you think that these games can draw together from older gamers and newer, younger gamers? I love both of these games and run Paranoia as a Saturday night family dinner game. That is an interesting thing, a family dinner game on Saturday night. Really especially Paranoia.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that.
You're a fan of Paranoia.
I love Paranoia, yeah.
And I know that there's a video game version of it now, I think, out on PC.
I have not gotten a chance to look at it yet. And
I watched a video about it.
So.
Yeah. But you're a big fan of the tabletop version of Paranoia, and it was it's an older game from the late 70s, early 80s.
And that was the thing. I found wait a minute, there's an actual the 6th edition, fairly current version out now. So,
and so you ended up picking up some of that stuff, didn't you?
I did. Yep, I bought the white box.
Yeah. So what do we think about these older games as reboots and relaunches? As far as can these games draw together both older gamers and newer, younger gamers?
Yeah, I hate it. They need to come up with new ideas all the time.
No. Yeah, you also own Fireball Island, I believe, as well, right?
Yes, yeah. No. I think it's great. I think it's amazing for them to bring back those titles. It sounds like that Saturday night family dinner game I have to hear more about. But I think being able to bring those titles back with better mechanics and better models and everything else, it's definitely being able to kind of draw that old crowd back in, and then they're able to kind of go, hey, when I was your age, son, daughter, or nephew, niece, or whoever, I used to play this game, but now it's better, and why don't we replay it together? I think it's good.
I think that Yeah, I think that, I mean, in some situations, it's obviously good. People were really positive about that Firewall Island. There's a lot of different games. Sometimes games change quite a bit when they get updated or
Right,
rebooted
like
or
your
whatever.
Car Wars. So I mean, you can get kind of the
Right.
whole Star Wars. People love it, and then other people are just like, it's not my Star Wars, so it's
Right. Yeah.
obviously bad.
Yeah. Like you mentioned Car Wars. So back in college, when I was in the early '90s, I played Car Wars with some friends of mine, like all the time. We played it on Friday nights and stuff. And it was, I mean, you could always buy Car Wars from since then till now, but mainly I think just as a PDF through Steve Jackson's like online store. Then they decided last year, actually early last year, maybe even before that, maybe it was in 2000. They must have started in 2018 at least. They decided to actually do a Kickstarter and make a new version of Car Wars, and it is wildly different. I mean, the story is still the same and all that kind of jazz, but instead of being little cardboard chips on a grid map, it is now almost kind of like Star Wars X-Wing in that you have plastic cars that are bigger and you have turning keys that you use to move them. You don't have the little dials where you pre-pick your maneuvers and stuff like that like you do in Star Wars, but it is a wildly different game. I played a beta of it at the first and potentially only Steve Jackson Games convention that was in April last year in Austin. And I went to that, and it was interesting. It was, I did eventually end up pulling the trigger on the Kickstarter. I initially was like, I'll wait till it comes out to retail. But then I was like, I used to play it so much. And if you buy it through Kickstarter, like the way Kickstarters work, there's a zillion other things I'll get with it.
Right.
So I did it. It's one of the few Kickstarters I've done recently. But
when's that?
I think
that
out? Who knows originally now, actually. Maybe end of this year, 2020. Okay. I'm not sure. But it's one of those games where I was just like, it'll come when it comes, especially since I've done a Kickstarter through them before. Admittedly, it was a long time ago, in kind of in the earlier days of Kickstarter. But I did the Ogre Kickstarter that
which
kind of
nailed out of the park, though, too.
Well, I mean, money-wise, if you just look at the Kickstarter, how much it came in, yes. But they probably lost money, and it also took like nearly 2 years to ship. So, there was that. But again, it was early Kickstarter. They didn't expect it to go as big as it did. It was kind of a hard thing to do. Nonetheless, I think that, and again, that game, if you look at the very original Ogre game that came out in the late 70s, that game was like on paper, and it was basically it came in a tiny little box, like smaller than like a VHS cassette box, like this weird little kind of clamshell plastic box. The new big huge Kickstarter version that they released came in a 27-pound cardboard box that was just filled with thousands of parts probably and all kinds of stuff. So, that's really cool if you're really into that. But on the other hand, sometimes it may be going overboard. I don't know. I mean, like that Fireball Island we keep mentioning. Like, did you play the original game as well, or did you just see the commercials like I did?
Yeah, I had the original game as a kid.
And so what do you think in comparison to the two?
Oh, it's night and day better. Original one there was definitely some rough spots about it. Not to say that the current one's perfect, but they fixed a lot of stuff I would say that the current one closer meets the expectations that I had of the original. I
get you. Okay.
So it it felt more like what they showed you versus what you got.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it can, like most things, it can kind of go both ways. You can definitely have, especially as people get older within tabletop gaming, when a game that you enjoyed when you were younger comes out again as a new version, if you've got kids, then it's very easy for you to be interested in getting it and teaching it to your kids because you enjoyed the original. If you are a young person who does not have, let's say, like a mentor, or somebody who's showing you how to play, you're just into getting into it and playing with your friends or whatever, then I don't know if the older games may have as much of a draw. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I know that there's tons and tons and tons of different games out there based off of anime. And I know that younger people, not all just younger people, there's obviously older people who enjoy it as well. But like, I've got almost no interest in anime. So I don't see myself doing that. You know what I mean? I don't see
Right.
myself playing those types of games. And if I had a kid that maybe they'd be super interested in anime, and that might not be a thing that we end up playing together, but they would enjoy it. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's a bad thing or a good thing inherently at all, really. I think that, every situation's a little different. Sometimes if it's just a cash grab and they're just taking something and just trying to re-release it, maybe with slightly prettier artwork, but they didn't change or update anything, then that's one thing. But if you look at something like Fireball Island, which we've mentioned several times here now, like that was a huge change and a difference. So that was, I think, a big benefit. It may not necessarily, I don't know, are they going to have that in stores eventually?
Oh, it's already in stores. Yep, you can get it.
Okay, so you could be a person who's never even heard of that. Like when you were a kid, you completely missed it, or whatever, or maybe you're a kid.
You missed the Kickstarter because you haven't really played games recently.
That's what I'm saying. Like you could be you can be a little kid and see this thing on the shelves at like Target or whatever, and be like, "Whoa, that's super cool looking," and then you'd buy it, or you'd get your parents to buy it, I suppose. But so there's that benefit too. But yeah, I think that it's a kind of a case by case thing. But I don't want to say ever that it's absolutely a good thing or absolutely a bad thing.
Right.
But no, I know I've enjoyed some of that stuff.
Yeah, done right. It's a good way to reuse and to reduce some of your marketing overhead. But I think it could be a very good thing.
Yeah, kind of like movie reboots sometimes, like sometimes using a particular license that's already out there brings in an audience that might not have come otherwise. Very frequently reboots can be a little squirrely. You know what I mean? Like sometimes that's problematic, but
right, because it's the person who's rebooting may have a different remembrance of what that was than what
versus what you do.
Right?
Yeah,
they might
absolutely.
think, like the movies, they might think it's the best actor, and that's really what made the movie. And you hated the actor, so their reboot is probably not going to be something you like because they're going to be focused on something that they found versus what you found. So
yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. All right, so I hope that partially answers the question for Frankie Lee Bailey. We'll see how it goes, but we'll probably talk more about that type of stuff in the future. Different types of reboots. It's not going anywhere, I don't think. No. We're going to keep seeing people doing that kind of stuff, and so sometimes it's just for trying to get name recognition, and other times it is to help sometimes parents teach games that they liked when they were younger to their now children and kind of stuff like that. So I think that's kind of a cool thing. All right. Well, so the topic of today's podcast. So we're in a situation, and when I say we, I mean us kind of as a planet, where we've got this problem. Depending on where you're listening from, you may not be in any kind of I suppose there's possibly some places where there's not any kind of lockdown or anything. Greenland? Okay, well, that's good. Still, if you're listening from Greenland, number one, hello. Number two, wash your hands. It's kind of important. So do that. But otherwise, a lot of us are in a situation where we're being either told to stay at home, which you should definitely do as much as you absolutely can, or you're being, like, to some degree, like, ordered kind of by your government to do that, because we need to flatten the curve. We need to make it so that we don't overtax our medical facilities. This virus is something that a lot of people will get, but the fewer people that we can have get it, the better, and the fewer people at once that we can have get it, also the better. So because of that, we can't really go out and play. We can't go out and play D&D with our friends. We can't really go out and play, board games and miniatures and be passing around the same dice cup and all that kind of stuff. So we do, a lot of places are like, initially we're like, okay, well, as long as it's a group that's under 10 people, it's fine. And now a lot of those places are like, yeah, you can't even do that. Well, just because your D&D group might be less than 10 people, or the board games that you like to play might be like for, 2 to 6 players, it's best to stay home as much as possible.
Right. You might be able to still play with those people, but yeah, house with you, but
like your family, it's not like you have to stay away from your family, from what I understand. Like once you're with your family, that's different, but
maybe that's how they sell it.
Yeah, well, it could be that. But so how do we keep playing the tabletop games that we love? I mean, video games are getting a big boost right now because people are home with not much to do in some situations. And video games, it's impossible to get a biological virus. from a video game. Not impossible to get computer viruses, I suppose, but that's been the case for quite some time.
Right.
But with tabletop games, with role-playing games, board games, collectible card games, and miniatures games, how do we keep doing that? How do we do that not just so that we can keep gaming and keep enjoying that, but also to keep social contact, to keep
right,
because it can get real lonely sitting at home, especially if you are an extrovert or if you are a person who lives by themselves and is used to going out and seeing people.
Or this is your main hobby. You don't really have a lot of other hobbies, and
right, yeah, exactly. It can also be just good for killing time as well.
Yeah, I think when we first talked about this topic, it was probably at least 6 months ago, and we were like, "Oh yeah, it's good for playing with your buddies from college or people from that town you moved from," and
right, exactly.
Or when you're younger kids when it's late, but they're allowed to be up but not out. So
right, exactly. Like there's plenty of people who've been doing this for a while, and there are these resources that we're going to talk about. Number one, there's not an exhaustive list, and number two, it is this is an issue that's been tackled for quite some time. It's being more tackled, obviously, now because of what's going on, but that's where it's at. But yeah, so this is something kind of been going on, like I said, for a while. We've talked about actually having an episode kind of about this on and off a little bit. You're right, for at least 6 months. And now we thought, well, this is probably a good time. So
yeah, we were like, we haven't really done it a ton ourselves. So we were still kind of, waiting until we had the right time. And then it just seemed like, I think we even had said, yeah, we probably should do this, in the next few weeks. And then we're like, okay, I guess we might as well do it now. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, again, like I said, this is not a complete list. This is not an exhaustive list. If we missed some things that you think that other people need to know about, then you should definitely try to drop it into the comments below, and or send us an email or something along those lines, and I'll get to that information.
Like one of these I just found out about on Sunday, so I started looking into that. So there are a ton out there. I know there's even a ton that I've seen that I just didn't get a chance to kind of go through. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to start with our list, or do you want to start about talking about how gaming is slightly different remotely?
Why don't we talk about how gaming is different remotely?
Okay.
Like, what have you got? What have you got about that?
Okay, so when I was thinking about this, it's going to be different. You're not going to get the exact same feel of having the people around your table or across the table from you that you're normally used to. You don't know what they're doing when, like, say you're doing your turn. You don't know if they're paying attention. They could be on their phone. They could be muted and have kids running around and cats jumping. So there are going to be times when people just are absolutely not engaged. I guess try to make rules for that, or like I know our session, like we usually can do like 4 or 5 hour sessions when we play D&D, and like this Sunday we played only a little over 2 hours just because it felt more taxing to us.
Yeah, and sometimes the other thing too is depending on what kind of system you're using for your chat, whether it's voice chat it's usually voice chat, but sometimes it could also be video chat, or it could be just straight up text chat, but most likely it's going to be at least voice. You may not know that they're not particularly engaged. Like, you're doing stuff and talking about explaining what the tavern looks like and all that kind of stuff, and someone's a spouse could come in to need to find out a question or need to get something, and so you may not realize, like, when you're in person, you can tell if a person is like just staring at their phone or whatever, trying to answer a text or something like that. But in this situation, because we're not face to face, it's harder to know that. So I think being a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, like receptive to it, or just just not getting too angry about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's also something that we're going to have to kind of get used to for a bit too. So yeah, that's a good point though.
Yeah. On the plus side, I found it was a lot easier to figure out when people are available because, well, partly because nobody has anything going on right now.
True. Yeah.
But two, you don't have to drive someplace, online is a little bit easier, especially for me during the week. Some of the ones I've done during the weeks are just a little bit easier to kind of arrange. So.
And when it's easier to arrange, like if you're talking about, again, like an RPG or something along those lines, when it's easier to arrange, it's just, I mean, you can also then do it for a shorter amount of time because you can do it more frequently. Like how many different jokes and memes have we seen going around over the years about how hard it is to get your group together, in meet space to be able to actually sit down all together at the same time and play a game. You've obviously still got some trouble because people have different lives and stuff like that. But it's hard. It's easier when you don't have to actually go anywhere. And it's also obviously right now also easier because you don't have a place to go to some degree. Right. So there's that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's, from that angle too, because you're not going anywhere, you don't have to worry like, is there a snowstorm outside or an ice storm?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's maybe more for just those of us up here in the northern part of the country and or the northern part of the hemisphere and stuff like that. If you live in other places, it could be a hurricane.
Right.
Sure. There's all kinds of things. Exactly.
But I mean, with the good comes the bad too. You're also now subject to more tech issues, people dropping off. Disconnects, someone's mic isn't working, so you guys are all ready to go, and someone can't get their mic to work.
Yep. We still have that once in a while for like business stuff. Like when we're trying to talk to somebody, we there's always some sort of, not always, but frequently some sort of technical thing. So that's always something to kind of get out of the way early, if at all possible.
Yeah, and sometimes you will have to not be able to do it, or have it come with another way to do it because it just won't work.
That's true.
The nice thing is I'll get to that when we get to that part. And because especially if your group hasn't done this before, if you haven't used these tools, it's gonna your experience is gonna take longer. It's not gonna be 2 hours of gaming might only really be an hour of gaming. It's almost like when you're learning a new game, you've got to learn the tools, and so everybody's gonna be adjusting and figuring stuff out. So
yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, do we want to talk about some of the different genres and things available?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay. Well, one of the big ones, obviously, for this type of gameplay is the RPGs. Our role-playing games are super. They kind of lend themselves to this type of play quite a bit, and there's a lot of different pieces of software out there.
Yeah, I would say there are probably the ones that are by default, usually the ones played online the most.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they seem to have the most amount of tools, most kind of in depth for tools and everything. Because like you said, it seems to lend itself to the best for this experience right now.
Right. So, what kind of you've got experience with Roll20?
Yeah, I would say Roll20. Did I lose you?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Sorry. It looked like you sounded like you trailed off all of a sudden. So.
Oh, no.
Yeah, okay. Sorry.
Talking about technical issues, exactly.
Yes. So for RPGs, there's kind of two main software systems that I've used. Well, one I've used, one came recommended, so I went and played around with it for a while. The first is Roll20. Roll20 is a website that allows you to play really any RPG game. The Roll20 kind of refers to obviously rolling 20 on a dice. Originally, it was made as just a virtual dice roller, and they've since expanded from there.
Right.
So a lot of your base games like D&D, Pathfinder, those rules are and systems are baked in right from the get-go. So you'll be able to kind of get going right away from that. But if you're playing more kind of like indie games or newer role-playing games or really old role-playing games, you're going to have to customize and to make it work.
Now, if you want to customize things, do you have to know a lot of programming and like basically make a mod, or is this are those tools available for basically anybody, even if you don't have programming experience?
It seems like you don't really need to have a lot of programming per se, although you can do some modules and stuff for it. It's mostly just like entering like the rules, creating a character sheet, and that kind stuff.
Sure.
So the nice thing I like about Roll20, it is free for players and DMs. So you're like our group on Sunday, we just tried out the free tier, and we're able to do pretty much everything we wanted to do. We were doing fog of war. We had, we could put ambient sounds in. We had quite a lot of different tokens, like monsters and players choices to pick from. So that was
this
nice.
is basically a two-dimensional type thing, right?
Right.
I mean, is that so it's like a top-down. You're moving when you say tokens, you're actually like on a map and you're moving around little circle tokens.
Yep.
So it's like it's two-dimensional, but that's still. I mean, it's fine. Like most RPG folks are not using full miniatures and full terrain and all kinds of stuff like that. Some are, but a lot of them are basically just like using graph paper and this and that. So
and I was able to upload my own map. So there's some maps also included that some free ones, and then you can also buy. They do have a store to buy kind of like things for pre-generated campaigns as well. So there was
token
quite
packs and stuff like that.
Yeah, our maps and especially like it looks like some of the official like Wizards campaigns and stuff like that. So yeah, I was impressed. The only thing that I've always found with Roll20 is that it's a little tough to use. At least I don't know, for me, it's not as intuitive as I would like it to be. There's a lot of times where I have to, like, once you find where it is to do something and how to do it, it's usually pretty easy. But sometimes finding where they've put stuff at the beginning, it doesn't seem to be where it is.
So it's a user experience kind of a thing.
Yeah, I feel like every time we get a new person on it, and so it didn't seem like it was just me. It was like, okay, now click down. It's going to be like the third icon down, and now when you click that, go to this, and then right click there, and then do this, and then now you can do this. And they're like, oh, okay.
And sometimes that comes from just the depth and how many things there are you have to do. You know what I mean?
Right.
I guess there's that.
I think it's one, just the amount of stuff they're doing. Two, they're doing it completely in the web, so that kind of limits some of the interactions you can do. And then three, like I said, I don't think it was built from the ground up as this system. So they've been kind of just adding stuff and adding stuff and adding stuff. So kind of like Board Game Geek. Board Game Geek has tons and tons of functionality, but it's the UI UX, especially until they started redoing it recently, was sometimes lacking. It was just because they just kept adding features to it. So
right, yeah. No, I see what you're saying. Is it? So you said it's free.
Yes,
but is there like a paid tier or anything like that?
Yeah, there's a $50 tier and a $100 a year tier. So those two.
So those
tiers,
are per year.
Yeah, they give you more stuff like dynamic lighting and being able to do custom character sheets and everything else. So, like I said, if you're just wanting to kind of just quickly do this, or just a temporary solution, you can do this for free. If you're looking to, make a virtual version of whatever RPG you're working on, that's when you're going to probably want to spend more money on the higher tiers, so you can kind of customize it for your rule system. But yeah, it's a fairly good solution, I would say. I don't believe it has any audio chat in. It does have text chat.
Sure, makes sense.
Yeah, so we did have to use Discord still with it.
Right. And then you said you just found another one recently too.
Yeah, so when we were talking, one of the guys I was playing with, he had mentioned to his friend that we were using it, and he suggested us to check out a system called Foundry Virtual Tabletop.
Okay.
So this is different from Roll20. It pretty much is trying to do the same thing, but it's kind of has a very different approach to it. For one, it's downloadable. So you don't play it through the web. You are playing it on somebody's server.
Okay.
And then the latest I read on it was that it's only available for Windows for the server part. But I'm not positive on that. I couldn't find anything that showed me whether you could do Mac and Linux yet.
Gotcha.
It sounds like it's being built to be able to do that, and because it's still in beta, it might just not have that done yet. They might be focusing on it, but it looks like they're putting tons of features in every month. There's even a nice video where he walks through the latest release that he had done. It's got some openness to it, so people in the community can build parts for it. They do have built-in voice chat, which is pretty impressive.
Nice.
Which is nice for, like, it sounds like there's ambient sounds and noises and stuff that can be done. The dynamic lighting and everything looked really slick. The UI UX is very, very clean. And from when I was playing around with it, it was pretty easy to find where stuff was. It felt kind of more like a D&D Beyond experience of it being very nice and clean and knowing where things are versus kind of a little bit more plain like Roll20.
Right.
The players can play for free. They basically are charging for the person running the game. It is $5 for the DM level. And then
is it $5 a month?
I think it's $5 a month, like Patreon. I think they're doing like a Patreon style with it.
I see, gotcha.
And then there's additional tiers above that, but it looks like none of the features in those upper tiers are available yet. So for now, I would say it's basically free or $5, but there are going to be a $10 and a $15 tier coming.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I mean, it looks great. I'm curious to see where that goes. Yeah, I mean, really two solid options to go from.
Right, for being able to play RPGs basically remotely, which is very cool, I think. For board games, there's it seems to be getting to be pretty well known, but there's a pretty well known website that is called Tabletopia, or potentially Tabletopia, but I think it's probably Tabletopia.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, it makes more sense. And they've got 800 plus different board games in their system that you can play with people.
Nearly a month worth.
Right, nearly a month worth of games that have come out. But it's anything from games like big, well-known games like Wingspan and Scythe, through games like Total, like chess and Parcheesi and stuff like that.
Okay.
And it's not like a completely flat top down. It's got like kind of a cool 3-dimensional sort of look to it, where you can kind of look around the board a bit and spin things around and stuff.
Okay.
And it's very cool. And like I said, it's not really a build your own adventure sort of thing where you have to kind of like put in all your stuff. It's you basically, if you're a member of the site, you can go in and say, I want to play Scythe, or I want to play whatever. And you can play with friends that you also get in there, and you can have like a private game, but you can also use it, from what I can tell, if you want to play against other people who you don't know. There are people who are like just sitting and wanting to play Wingspan or something. And then you come along and go, okay, cool, I would also like to play that. And then you can kind of go from there. I don't know about voice chat. I did not look that far into it. I should have. It may have voice chat. Those of you out there in the audience may know whether it does or not. Let us know in a comment or something like that. But if it doesn't, then obviously you've got lots of other options. But I would assume almost because of this, the way the system is designed, I would think it would, but maybe it just has text chat. It does have a... Go ahead.
So how are games added to this? Are they building all the games, or can you...
The games seem to be built either by... I don't know if they're being built by the Tabletopia people, or if they're being built by the publishers who are using Tabletopia's like framework. You know what I mean?
Okay, sure.
That kind of thing. So, but they do kind of like these things kind of look the same, and there's a definite kind of clean look, a very pro looking kind of stuff from the. Now, admittedly, I didn't look at like really super crazy weird out there games, but I did look at a lot of the big names that are getting the most play, and a lot of the like free tier games, like your chess and your Parcheesi and backgammon and stuff like that. They all look like super, pro, well done. Like I said, it has both free and paid tiers. The paid tiers, there are 2 of them, and one of them is at $5 a month, and the other one's at like basically $10 a month. And what that does is like the $10 a month one allows you not only to be able to play like all the games, because some games are premium games and you can only play them if they're if you've got a paid subscription. But even with the $10 a month, like you could at the $10 a month, you could have free players, like free level, free tier players play the premium games with you from what it looks like. Okay. So if I'm the person who's spending the $10 a month and, my 3 friends are all have accounts on Tabletopia but are not paying, then we could play a game like Scythe or whatever, something like that. Or some other sort of premium game. Whereas if that's not the case, if I have maybe the $5 a month, but not the $10 a month, then I can't do that. I can still play Scythe, but then to play Scythe with somebody else who wants to play, I have to also, they also have to have it. So there's some benefits to that. And I think it's very well, it looks very well done. Everything about it is very pro. And that's a lot of titles, like 800 plus titles is a lot. Yeah, admittedly, like again, there's, at the free level, you're playing not necessarily the most exciting kind of new games out there, but there's definite stuff out there.
Enough for your itch, yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. At least to get your feet wet and then decide whether this is something maybe you and your friends want to do. And I think that's kind of a cool thing. It's predominantly just board games. I mean, it doesn't look like they have any kind of interface that I've seen, particularly for RPGs. I don't know what card games, maybe card games, like not. Yeah. Like collectible card games. I think we're going to find that there's not a lot of these types of things for collectible card games. It seems like if you want to go playing collectible card games, you move straight into the realm of video games. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like the new, like Magic the Gathering Online is basically kind of like Hearthstone, which is basically like, a lot of those other types of kind of online card games. But this is a different thing. This is definitely more, you're moving around poker pieces and stuff. Oh yeah, it's got poker. It's got all kinds of stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting system, and again, you can get your feet wet for free on it, from what we can tell, and also and
you can also play like basically almost like the old email style, like
that's right as well. Yes, and depending on how many, depending on your payment tier, it also allows you to have X amount of games like in progress. So if you're playing more like play by email, where you're like, here's my turn, and then I have to wait for my opponent to do my turn and that kind of stuff, you could be having 4, 5, 6 games running at once with different players because you're paying the $10 a month. Whereas I think you can only have 2 if you're using the free. So, that's an interesting thing. And I don't know if it's for Mac. Well, it's all browser based. I guess.
Say, it looks all browser based. It does look like they do have a create your own game, so it looks like you can enter your own stuff.
Yeah, there is a paid tier as well for designers who either want to put their own games in there, whether it's for prototyping, whether it's for beta testing, or whether it's just to get people, to do that. I don't know if they have some sort of, I didn't look that close into it. I don't know if they have like
there has to be a licensing, yeah.
Or like a profit sharing type of thing. Like if I designed a game and I put it into Tabletopia and paid for it and people started playing it at the premium tier, would I get some sort of money for that or something along those lines? That I don't
know. Oh, bless you.
Oh, I thought I turned off the mic. Sorry.
Nope. That was a good try.
It did not work. Yeah.
Next time.
All right. Yeah, definitely. So let's see what else. And then another one that's big, both in board gaming, but also into wargaming and miniatures and stuff like that, is called Tabletop Simulator. Now, this is for Mac and PC.
And Linux.
I don't know if, is it for Linux?
Yep.
Tabletop Simulator? Okay. Maybe not through Steam, though. I don't know. I only saw the symbols for Mac and PC on Steam.
Oh. Yeah, I'm almost positive it's for Linux as well.
Yeah, but it's available on Steam. Steam is the kind of video game, marketplace for downloading video games and stuff like that. Generally, the base price is around $20, but I've been told time and time again that you can wait and pick it up for cheaper. One of the benefits about it is that there are also, just like with Tabletopia, like this is not a monthly thing. You pay $20 and then there you go. But there are a lot of official game mods, is what they call them out there, available for Tabletop Simulator. So if you get it through Steam, not only are there tons and tons of free game mods for you to use, but there's also the pay ones, and they're very, very simple to install. You can do it straight through Steam.
So basically just added purchases.
Exactly. Like if you want to play Wingspan, like the official version that's been like okayed by the publisher, and you want to play it in Tabletopia, Tabletop Simulator, then you pay like, I think it's like $8 roughly. If you're going to play Zombicide, in Tabletop Simulator, again, it's like $10. And that's, now you've got the mod and you can play that and play with your friends and stuff like that. I don't believe both people need to have Zombicide on that, but I don't know that for sure. I don't know if each of you needs to pay to buy it. That would seem kind of weird, but maybe. I didn't look that far into it. I've only messed with really with like free mods, so I don't know what the pricing is on that, unfortunately, for those things. But the free mods are like, because the thing I'm interested in doing with it is predominantly like miniatures play. The reason that those mods are free is because they are using generally licensed stuff. They're sculpting Space Marines and orcs and things like that from companies like Games Workshop and others. And those are like mods that are being put into the community for free. So there's no money being made, but still, sometimes they also go down, evidently. So that's something to keep an eye on. But it allows you, there's like a total like physics engine. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to.
Right. You can
it's not like a game where you're.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Like you actually chuck the dice if you want to. You can like pick up and throw a model if you want to. So it's a lot more open-ended. It's instead of, I mean, like the games that you're buying, like say Wingspan and all that stuff, they have got like the rules to some degree and they're kind of explaining how it goes, but it's still kind of open-ended. Whereas when you start getting into especially the free mods, it's just basically, here's a bunch of these types of models. You can bring them into the game. You can set them over here. If you move them further than they're supposed to, it's only your opponent who's going to be like, hey, you moved further than you were supposed to. It's not like the game says, here, you can move 6 inches and that's as far as you can move in the world. Right. You can pick them up and move them to the other side of the table if you want to, so it's more like a real game on the table because you're just moving stuff around. Right. So it's not as much like a video game particularly.
Yeah, it's simulating the table.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why they called it that, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So that one's also relatively well known. And again, people generally chat on other platforms while they're doing that. There's another one that's called Vassal, Vassal, all in caps for some reason. It must stand for something probably. And that's kind of a 2D style top-down thing, kind of along the lines of Roll20, I guess. But again, it's aimed more towards, from their website, it's aimed more towards boards and card games. And it's free, open source software, and has, in the notes here, I wrote trillions of downloadable game mods, which I'm technically exaggerating. But when I clicked on the thing on the website to go to game mods for it, I clicked on it and it basically opened up something that looks just like Wikipedia. Like it was a wiki, but it looked like Wikipedia. It was just completely styled after Wikipedia. And I was like, wow, look at all these games. Holy cow. And then I realized that was just the A's. Like that was just the page with A. Yeah, no, it just goes and goes and goes. Now, partially that's because the bar is set a little lower because you don't have to like 3D sculpt, stuff. You're basically just using, again, flat stuff because it's very flat. It is not even like a skeuomorphic. I'm using flat tokens in a 3D space. It is like literally just straight down flat 2D. So all you have to do is just put basically a piece of artwork into the circle and there you go. There's your token. Sure. But there are companies out there who have worked with Vassal in the past to make official mods. I know that I'm pretty sure that Malifaux, the kind of sort of steampunky, sort of weird Wild West sort of kind of game from Weird Games, they had for a while an official, I don't know if they still do now with the third version of their rule set, but they did have a full-blown official version of Vassal, or of Malifaux for Vassal. In general, pretty much all the mods are free because they're all made by the audience. They're all made by they're crowdsourced or whatever. And there are, again, that game or that system, I'm not going to lie, it's not got the greatest UX either. It can take a little bit of, kind of, figuring out what's going on. You can be going back and forth a lot trying to figure it out. There's a lot of trial and error. But yeah, so it's it's a good system that a lot of people use for board games, card games, and also, like I said, miniature games. I've talked to a lot of people there's a lot of people who used to play. I don't know if they still do anymore, but there's a lot of people that were playing Star Wars X-Wing on it. Like there were tournaments online and stuff like that from people who were playing Star Wars X-Wing.
Yep, I remember hearing about that. Okay.
Yeah, so Vassal was big for that. There was a lot of folks that I knew even in the local area who you wouldn't really see them at local events too much, but they would play on Vassal like all the time. So, and sometimes people use that as, I play on Vassal so I can practice for when I go to the real events, you know? So once we get to start going back to stores and stuff like that, it might not be a bad idea for practice in those situations.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Like I said, we didn't really touch on much in the way of collectible card games because I don't really know of any
other than Magic Online.
Yeah.
I even talked to like my oldest who's into Pokemon, and he couldn't think of any way to really play Pokemon online. So, I mean, other than, the actual like video games. So,
right. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so, in many situations though, when you're playing these games, no matter what they are, whether they have a voice chat or not, a lot of people these days for the actual kind of chat interface have a tendency to use something called Discord, which if you've heard of it, you probably use it quite a bit. And if you haven't, you should look into it. It's also free.
Right.
And is there a web version or is it only a client? I think it's a client only. Like Slack has a web version.
I don't know if there's web, but there's. I use the phone one too.
Absolutely. Like it's available on Android and iOS and also Mac and PC and all over the place. And it's a good.
That's how I've gone past my computer for some reason is not working, so I will sometimes just swap over to my phone and then log in that way. Or if my internet's not working, it's a good way to swap.
Sure. Discord's basically it's very much like Slack if you've used it, honestly, like for business and stuff like that. And except that it has both text chat and voice chat. It pushes a little bit more into voice chat than say something like Slack.
Right, and a lot of open ones out there. Like I know a lot of the more recent indie RPGs will have either by the company or by the game will have their own Discord channel. So easy to find people playing that.
Yeah, you can set up Discord channels for free. There is a paid tier as well that gives you some extra benefits and stuff like that. And I think they are also, admittedly, Discord is initially really aimed more towards video gamers, but now people are using it for all kinds of things. But there are a lot of video game centric features in Discord, but it also works quite well for the types of things that we're doing in tabletop. It's got video conferencing as well, which also works pretty well. I don't know. I've never done video conferencing with more than a couple of people, so I don't know how well that would work. But it's a pretty great platform for chat. There are other ones out there. Certainly, people use Skype. People use TeamSpeak. I don't know if Ventrilo is still a thing or not. But Discord seems to be the big dog, not only because of the voice chat, but also because those servers sit there and then you can have text chat, and it's almost not like a forum, but it is kind of a little bit like people just I have a Discord channel for my Tabletop Minions Patreon supporters,
right.
And they just will sit and have conversations and talk back and forth and show off pictures of things they're working on and all that kind of stuff. So it works out pretty well that way. Yeah, I think one of my cats just threw up. So I was talking over it, so hopefully you didn't hear it, but I did just tell you about it. Oh, no, here we go. He's gonna do it right literally here.
Nice.
Diesel. This is the fun from working at home.
Right. This is the magic, folks.
Exactly. This is how the sausage gets made. That's terrible sausage. Don't eat that sausage.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah.
No,
all right. So right, not for a while, absolutely. So anyway, I got to clean some stuff up. But I hope that we were able to sort of help both in explaining ways to keep playing with your friends and potentially even make new ones to play, keep playing your tabletop games while we've got to stay at home. And also I've kind of hope we've helped maybe take your mind off of things, though I'm now talking about those things again, which brings it back, but still, I think that the distractions,
they
right. Yeah, exactly. It's one or the other. But the distractions, the reason that we want to keep playing is not just because we love to play, though that is a big portion of it, but also because it does help distract us and keep us sane to some degree in a lot of situations. So if we can try to figure out a way to help facilitate that by telling you about maybe a software system or something like that that allows you to be able to do those things, then I hope that this did help. So you got anything else, Matt?
I think that's all, but I can't wait to hear all the fun things. There's going to be at least like 2 or 3 things I learned, I'm sure, after I see comments.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, again, this is not an exhaustive list. These are just the ones that we know of that are kind of big, and but there's a lot of different places. I'm sure that there are people who play RPGs just on Reddit and stuff like that or whatever, and that's cool. So there's all kinds of different options out there. But these are a little bit more well-known ones, at least maybe well-known to us. So thanks again for listening to this episode of the GameFor Podcast. If you've got questions or comments and you're watching this on YouTube, please leave a comment below. If you're listening via your favorite podcast player or just aren't into the whole YouTube comment section thing, then you can feel free to reach out to us via email at podcast@imgamefor.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and technically TikTok. And lastly, to find out more about the GameFor platform, designed to connect tabletop gamers, please check out our website at imgamefor.com. That is www.imgamefor.com. Thanks.
Stay safe, everyone.